You're listening to PumaPodcast.
Hi, I'm Arriola of Out.
And I'm Mika Ortega, co-host of the A Hoot podcast, a proud member of the PumaPodcast network.
We want to have a conversation here kasi in our work with Owl, we've been noticing there are a lot of people who are advocates and activists. They're always like overworked. There's always something urgent. Merong mental health issues na nag-crop up. And it's not just like one person, pero parang several times na natin na-notice. Baka it's a phenomenon.
And I feel like a lot of the time, it's an unchecked phenomenon. Sometimes we articulate it, we talk about it, pero parang kailangan talaga natin mag-pause to reflect and reflect some more to see how our line of work is affecting us and how it affecting us affects our line of work. I said yes to doing this conversation with you. I do want to zero in on what was the moment, or if I can say trigger, for you to start reflecting on your work as an activist and how that has an effect on your life.
Okay. First, last year, di ba, I got sick. As in very seriously sick. And then I started, syempre, seeing all my doctors and really come to the realization na this is a product of parang years of neglect. I've neglected myself, my body, myself, my person for so long because of the work that I do na. You're working for social change. There are urgent concerns for them, and so you have to serve, you have to sacrifice, and that neglect parang translated into eventually that illness nga that I got. That whole illness process made me realize that. So I would say mine was, I would call it maybe trauma, pero it's parang the long trauma with a small T instead of the big T na talagang dramatic incident or event, which is probably what you would call yours, no?
I kind of understand what you mean. I guess kasi mine was a little bit, the incident was really violent. So I'm someone who does communication work, pero my other background, that's the longest background probably professionally even, is na I'm a chairperson for the Justice for the Ortega movement. So my source of trauma was something na I was too young. I didn't really choose it. It happened to my dad and I became parang family of someone who was killed in their line of work because they were a radio broadcaster, an environmental defender. And in that line of work, he was at risk for that kind of retaliation and that had happened. That was parang the rudest awakening for me of what was really happening in the human rights space in the Philippines.
Yeah, and a lot of the advocates for social change today, and through the decades, encounter that di ba? Somebody you lose, somebody you know well, kung hindi man family member, a close colleague, associate, or the same advocates also maybe I think go through that long trauma that I came to realize I had experienced, no? And led to my illness. Kasi nga, ang daming mga urgent concerns every day, talagang, and you face threats every day, but you have to just continue on, and sometimes there's no certainty kung ano yung outcome ng ginagawa mo, parang inuntog mo lang yung ulo mo sa pader, and that's really taxing and then also because of the spirit of like talagang sacrifice, di ba? Kasi para sa bayan to, serbisyo to, para sa kinabukasan to, parang sasantabi mo muna yung sarili mo for the bigger cause. And that really takes a toll. I consider that also trauma kasi trauma is, it's a form of violence. It's a tearing away from yourself kasi you put yourself aside Parang it's already a culture in the advocate space. It's the environment, the guidelines of how we do our work forms a culture that results in trauma.
Parang we're compelled kasi to do so much for the ideals that we believe in, and we fight for it so much na we lose ourselves in the process. I personally have experienced that, fighting for justice for my dad. I remember na parang, as in, it sometimes would become so felt for me na parang nawawala na ako ng pangalan. My name was, I'm the eldest daughter of number 142. And I took it upon myself. Siguro din kasi that's meaning-making for me. I wanted to cope by thinking maybe this will help the community. Maybe by fighting for justice, mas mababawasan yung patayan. And in putting all of that stuff in my head, parang in a way, medyo na-dehumanize din ako. Nawala yung sarili ko. And I remember pa nga na on the road to recovery from all of that grief, na it really was about making a very distinct choice of choosing myself.
But you kept doing it pa rin. Well, how does that feel?
Um, that's trauma laugh. No, it's honestly very difficult. I think you do have to contend with. For me, personally, it's really the meaning that I attach to the things that I do. And that really matters a lot to me. And I think a lot of mga aktivista at mga advocates naman attach a lot of meaning to the work that we do. And sometimes, it justifies forgetting ourselves, diba? So to me, I still show up. It's not the way it used to be before. Dati talaga grabe. I didn't have space to process that I had just lost my dad. To even have the option not to talk about it because we were looking for justice. The only thing to do was to talk about it. Right now, having gone through it's been 13 years since I've gone through grief therapy. The meaning to me is I show up, right?
Mhm.
Pero minsan may mga moments na it becomes tedious. Yung para siyang, it's almost like doing chores
Yeah.
sometimes. You show up because you have to, you don't want to, but you do. Na it's almost sometimes as parang Sisyphean, na paulit-ulit lang, tapos walang pinupuntahan. So I stand with the ideal na, showing up is something that matters. Having done a lot of work with activists and advocates, I know that a lot of the things I personally enjoy did come with great sacrifice.
Yeah.
So to me, showing up naman is a sacrifice na pwede ko pa namang ibigay without losing myself in the process.
Yeah, I agree completely. No, it's important to show up. Pero yun ngang the balancing na let's not lose ourselves also. Let's also, self-care is so important. That's the thing na talagang na-learn ko the hard way kasi nagkasakit nga ako and I really had to attend to myself. No, the self-care along the way is important. Your boundaries are important. Yung alam mo yung wala ka na talaga yung for yourself sometimes na meron kang plano for your own life, pero sige, huwag na lang muna kasi this is such a big cost and it's important and it's, and then wala na. I mean, your whole life has changed already and it didn't go the way you planned it to go or you wanted it to go kasi tinabi mo yung sarili mo. And that makes you also tired and maybe nawawalan ka ng motivation and affect din yung work mo.
But hindi ba parang such a costly lesson, at least for you, Oya, to learn this way, na your body started to really
Assert
call
itself.
your attention. Oo Na nakialam na siya, na tigil na.
Oo.
Parang wow, it really reached that point.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong, I'm so grateful for that experience of becoming an activist, lalo ng student days, kasi it really taught me a lot, no? Pero yun nga, sometimes you sacrifice things na for yourself na hindi naman kailangan or hindi naman dapat i-sacrifice kasi may cost yun, may cost.
How does that negotiation, parang for you, Oya, parang having gone through the lesson that your body gave you, how do you negotiate also now? What does that look like?
First, I had to pause talaga and attend to myself. Not just because of my illness, but also, in a way, getting to know myself again. Kasi nga, neglect ko na. So, what do I like to do? Basic things. What do I like to do? What do I see in the future? What do I want in the future? What do I enjoy now? What do I not like? Mga ganyan. Parang you have to regain self. Thankfully, I don't regret anything because talagang it's valuable. Valuable work. It was enriching psychically. Pero, yun nga, nag-over ako.
When you go through something very, very traumatic, it really shakes you to the core in that you rebuild yourself and redefine yourself. So actually, sometimes when I talk about why meron ako parang BC at 80. Like for the trauma and after the yung trauma because I really, really changed to survive the situation.
Yeah.
Pero may ganun, may parang rebuilding. One of the things that I told my therapist nung gumraduate na ako sa grief therapy was, I know that I will never be the same again because I have the scars and I walk different. Yung parang feeling mo na pilayan ka. Tapos iba ka na maglakad. Like, iba na yung balance mo.
Yeah.
And then, may scars ka na. They've healed na. Pero they're there. You can feel it.
Yeah.
It's still there. At the risk, of sounding a little cheesy, I find na, in a way, it comes with great love din naman kasi. Diba? Parang the love for the country, for the bayan, yung pag-ibig na yun. Meron talagang ganon. It's really about also remembering to do yung sinabi mo kanina, like self-care, but also like self-love.
Oo, kasi in order to, when you say, let's say in the romantic sense, when you say, I love you more than my life or something like that. It's sure, sige, pero dapat meron ka munang, ang prerequisite doon, dapat meron ka rin one na love for yourself before you can love somebody more, di ba? Hindi pwedeng zero ka. Zero love for yourself.
That's such an interesting parang imagery, no? Na parang, if you do that, if you love someone, as in the person, more than yourself, then it's not a healthy love, it's not a healthy relationship. And kind of expanding that love to, hindi pwedeng zero ka kahit mahal mong bayan.
Yeah, and also, how do you naman, kunwari sa bayan nga, how do you serve? It's your body. That's my mistake. I treated my body as like a tool. It was like a computer. When it was me, it was me. It was a person, no? It's not just a tool. I should take care of it.
I remember I took an elective when I was still in college on solidarity guard. And I know you've heard me say this. One of the things that he worked on was works of love. And he's hyper-focused on this passage in the Bible when Jesus told his disciples, you love others as you love yourself. And the way that it was unpacked included things like love others as you love yourself, meaning simultaneously, but also na the quality of the love you give others is dependent on the quality of love you give yourself. And when I was doing this work, being part of my healing, was really thinking, I fight for human rights, but I have to really see myself as a human being placed in that context also, with feelings, with dignity. Yeah, like you said, with boundaries. And to see that as something that directly impacts how I interact with other people, how I serve, kung paano ko pinapahalagahan yung sarili ko, shows kung paano ko magsisilbihan yung iba. You can do amazing work taking care of yourself.
Yeah. In fact, maybe the amazing work starts when you start to take care of yourself.
Kailangan lang natin maalalang tao dito.
Oo.
I also think na it's important to be proactive in making sure you carve out the time and the energy for other things that make you life.
The other thing you have to work through for that also is to be able to do that without guilt. Kasi a lot of people have guilt kapag we're going on vacation for 3 days. And then there's guilt kasi ang daming mga kailangan gawin. Or yung mga tao overloaded na nga, tapos magbabakasyon pa ako, mga ganyan. But it's important everybody should take that time off.
That's true, no? It's the guilt that gets in the way.
Yeah.
So it's like it almost feels like a negotiation on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Kasi syempre, may mga panahon naman talaga na wala ka choice. You have to show up, you have to do these things. Pero the carving out and the living for oneself.
When you deal with somebody who's been traumatized, the most important thing, parang the urgent thing for them first is safety, the feeling of safety, na they're finally safe, it's okay, you can calm down, and then we can deal with this, and then we can process. But like advocates now, continually pa rin, they're bombarded with, there are threats to their lives, there are urgent issues there, they just can't stop, and there's no safety. And I'm thinking, and we've discussed this before, no? Talagang the importance of building a community of these advocates that purposefully is there to build a safe parang a sanctuary where they can rest a little bit, talk about what they experience, where there's no judgment. We've talked to several groups who are trying to do this already. In the last episode I spoke with the commune, and they have huddles about wellness and mental health, mga ganun. So they're trying to build that already. But that's so important, diba? That's that important first step.
Yeah, no, it is an important step. The sense of community and that sense of safety. And that's great when you talk about commune and what they're doing. And it's really on the level of parang having that toolkit. Yung tool din kasi ang community eh. Diba?
Exactly. I was going to
It's a
say nga,
safety level.
yeah, the safety, but also the different ways that you can process. And part of that also sometimes kasi when you're so tired na and you're traumatized already, you tend to withdraw, di ba? And then you're in isolation na. But it's also important for healing the social connection, di ba?
Yeah. And having spaces that are intentional. Yung talagang clear sa kanila na, okay, magre-reflect tayo. Okay, pause muna. Alagaan natin sarili natin. I think those seem to be very, very small changes.
Mm-mm.
Pero ang laki ng impact.
At saka you're able to, yun nga, napag-usapan na ninyo, and then you can get on now with what you need to do. In a way, may liberation na nangyari.
Right.
When you say it's the little things, it's sa YSL, di ba? We always start our meeting with the empathy check. No? So we find out what's going on with everybody. So if everybody's in a good place, mga things like that.
You can talk about mental health and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's health. And yun nga, parang I also think na doing the work with human rights advocates, activists, we're best suited nga to understand that because the very core of the work that the community does is zeroing in on human dignity and fighting for that. There's a unique role of the people who are in the group. Hindi nasa-separate basta-basta na, I do an 8 to 5 job, I go home, that's my life. When you're doing human rights and democracy work, that's your life.
Yeah.
That's who you are. Diba? Parang
Yeah.
that's your identity. I think that's important. May pagkilala na merong uniqueness din kasi doon sa space. We do need to recognize na the people in the room or the people in the community are compelled by the higher ideals and values. And they're willing to sacrifice for those higher ideals and values.
So we need special spaces for activists and advocates where there's an understanding of their very particular issues, motivations, context, and also history. And that's it. I hope you found our conversation insightful. Again, this is Oya Arriola from the A Hoot podcast. This episode of Teka Teka was produced by Jill Caro. Our editor-in-chief is Carl Javier. If you know an advocate or activist who's also working hard and might need to take care of themselves, please share this episode with them. Thanks for listening.